Hello, welcome to episode 10 of the Housing Sector Podcast. In this episode, we are going to talk a bit about some protests that I joined last week. We're going to introduce you to a new member of the team who will be handling some of our news segments coming up, something exciting. We'll be talking about this ongoing X debate with providers leaving the platform due to all this hatred that's out there. Plus, I'll be answering some of the questions that have been submitted to me via the Housing Sector website. Stay tuned, all of this and more.
Housing Sector Podcast, Episode 10, Protesting and the X Debate.
On Saturday, 10th of August, I travelled down to London to meet up with some other members of SHAC who were holding protests as part of their long summer campaign where they have been protesting outside buildings of established housing providers. The main purpose of these protests is kind of to drive awareness, but more importantly to bring together people so you can meet face to face. And this was the highlight. It was great meeting face to face with some people whose names I've known, I've shared with emails. We like comments, we see each other on social media. It's great to meet face to face, and what a lovely crowd they are. And it was great to see so much support, especially from bus drivers going past, bibbing their horn where we were throughout London. So there was a couple of protests there. We went to, and I'm going to take you over to a new member of our team to describe this one. Abby, in our head office. What can you tell me about Riverside and One Housing?
Thanks, Ben. Riverside, one of the UK's oldest and largest housing associations, manages around 75,000 homes nationwide, offering various housing options, including supported and retirement housing. One Housing primarily operates in London and the South East, managing about 35,000 homes with a focus on care and support services. In December 2021, Riverside and One Housing merged, forming a major housing association managing over 100,000 homes. The merger aimed to improve service delivery and housing development by pooling resources and increasing capacity. Despite their size and resources, both organizations have faced significant issues. Both have been criticized for slow responses to repair issues, leading to prolonged tenant dissatisfaction. The Housing Ombudsman has found instances of maladministration, particularly in handling complaints and maintenance, resulting in orders for compensation and process improvements.
There you go, the power of AI. Who would have thought I could have a co-host and a studio far away? When we got to Riverside Housing, the first member of staff who came out was very angry and in fact told everyone to off. I don't know, just kind of miffed as she thought we were there to cause her upset and concern. I don't know, it didn't seem like the response. And then another lady did come out and then was more sort of passive aggressive. You can't film me. I don't want to be filmed. Turn that camera, don't film me. She wasn't being filmed. But it's a bit ridiculous to stand in front of people who've got cameras asking them not to film you. If you don't want to be filmed, don't come out and have a big conversation about it. It's this old debate. It's a public highway. You've been filmed thousands of times because you're in central London anyway. But the one person you can voice to is this lovely little old fella who was there with his camera and wasn't recording her anyway. And she did that in that continued passive-aggressive way. So, you know what, get on with your life. Eventually they did, and we continued and we handed out leaflets and we had conversations with people that were passing by. Caused no harm, no foul. I think of all the protests that were happening around London that day and that week, we were the one the police weren't interested. So after One Housing and Riverside Group, we moved on to Notting Hill Genesis. Back over to Abby.
Notting Hill Genesis is one of the largest housing associations in the UK. Formed in 2018 through a merger between Notting Hill Housing and Genesis Housing Association. Both organisations had long histories in providing affordable housing, with Notting Hill Housing dating back to 1963 and Genesis having its roots in the 1960s. The merger aimed to create a more robust and efficient organization capable of delivering better services and increasing the supply of affordable homes. Notting Hill Genesis manages around 66,000 homes in London and the South East, offering a mix of affordable rent, shared ownership, and market sale properties. The merger has caused issues. Residents have voiced issues related to poor service delivery, maintenance problems, and a perceived lack of responsiveness from the organization. These issues have raised questions about whether the merger has benefited tenants or if the scale of the organization has made it more difficult to provide an effective services.
Thanks, Abby. It's always important to be very polite to AI because one day they will end up ruling the world. And they'll say, oh, that Ben Jenkins fella, he was always very polite. So thank you, Abby. Okay, so Notting Hill Genesis, a few more of us turned up. It was great to see a few more faces there. And we stood out on a sort of busier road. So we got lots of traffic, lots of support from bus drivers, which was great. And we handed out lots of leaflets and had lots of great conversations with people clearly affected by substandard housing. Do I think it's all to do with mergers? No, but there is sort of concern that they're all growing too big, too fast, and that's when we see that dip in service. It's apparent. You know, you lose that personal touch, you lose that positive impact that you have on your local environment, your local community by growing too big, and everyone just becomes a nameless number rather than someone that you know, that you support. So it was great to see so many people. Thanks to Suze for sorting that all out. It's been great work, and I think we're going to grow in numbers, and I think it's only going to get bigger. That was the last one for this summer. I will put up a correction if I'm wrong, but that was the last one for this summer. There will be information about other SHAC gatherings that are happening later on in the year. When I know them, I will let you know. So that was it. I have to say, on my journey in and out of London, I drive past Grenfell Tower, and that is a stark reminder of the 72 lives that were lost. And in a week where I was threatened with prison by my own landlord for raising voices, you can find out about that in the TSA podcast, episode 3. I can't help but think, hang on a minute, no one's been held accountable. No one's been imprisoned or punished. No one's even been fined, as far as I know. I know there's the public inquiry and that's all going, and the police are probably right saying, let them do all the legwork and then we'll find out who we can prosecute. But 7 years after the fact, it is a concern that no one has yet been brought to justice. And many of them have probably continued in roles, you know, that they should have been removed from ages ago. Let's hope the public inquiry ends soon and we start to get the real information and we start to see some prosecutions for it. But it was a stark reminder of why we do social housing activism, why I've become a member of social housing, why I've become a vocal part of this. You know, what's starting out with my own complaints, it's a much bigger picture. And there are thousands of voices out there who just aren't being heard. And they're not being heard because they don't have the platform and they're being kept silent and the law works against them. Which moves us on nicely, in a way, to the next part of this, the X debate.
The X debate.
Okay, so at a time where we need more and more transparency and we need to be hearing the voices of the customers, whether they're praising us or not praising us, as the case is often, there is a growing number of housing providers who are now saying, we're coming off X, Twitter, we're coming off X, it's full of hatred, it's this cesspit of hatred and hate speak and political divide, and we're fed up of it, all these conspiracy theories. They don't provide any evidence for this, and I have to say that I have several Twitter accounts, and I don't get all this hate speech. I just don't find it. Now, if we bear in mind that social media, I think it was Charlie Brooker that said it's like the biggest video game in the world. It's about engagement. It's about getting your attention and getting you to like, repeat, and share, and that's it. They want your attention, so they'll do anything they can to get your attention. So my feed tends to be filled with pictures. It's a lot of housing stuff. There is a great deal of housing stuff, cladding stuff, upset residents, leasehold issues. That's what, because primarily that's what I engage with on my housing sector or my GreenSquareAccord Twitter accounts. They're the ones I engage with. A lot of SHAC stuff on there. I do tend to get funny videos of cats or fat people falling over. I'm not proud of it. It just makes me laugh. sorry, it's a guilty pleasure. So I do tend to get some of that because I stop when that goes, I have a laugh, and then I scroll on. But look, let's not take my word for it. Unlike a lot of these providers go, it's full of hate, we're coming off. Here is a screenshot video of my Twitter feed. Hey, so we got one of my GreenSquareAccord ones there. Obviously, give that a like. Some sales, some housing ombudsman stuff, cladding victims, give that a like. Advertising, Chartered Institute of Housing, Community Summit. Some guy with Guinness Trust there, damp and mould. Some recommendations. End our cladding scandal. Tom. Bandwagon jumping about how great he is, I suspect. Leaseholder, Inside Housing, Barclays. I am a member of Barclays. Buyers of new flats and lease protect for all customers. Okay, it's a lethal combination. Elon Musk firing a rocket. More of this cladding. HAs, Housing Associations, Birmingham, Dispatch. Jeremy Hunt. Okay, Office for National Statistics. Inside Housing. Creepy, the worst jobs in the world. Well, yeah, wouldn't want to be there doing that job. Thank you for responding to my post. Local authority as a freeholder. Blue light maps. Advertising. This poor breakdancing woman. Unite for Workers' Economy. Okay, yeah, so rich. All right, whatever. Important housing ombudsman again. Yeah, strike wild. Don't know what that is. Strong GDP growth isn't surprising. Again, it's that Office for National Statistics. Tony Blair, even the press, breaking news. Public sector, you get double-digit pay rise. Turn down Labour Treasury, boring. Watch reform. Inside Housing. Labour government. Bourneville Village Trust. Robert Wood, the world's expensive skate park. Labour getting to work immediately. So Tommy Fury getting divorced. Been compared to a lettuce, rightfully so. Here we go. More Inside Housing. More from Barclays Bank. More about Tommy Fury announcing split after 5 years. Someone dancing. Well, yeah, next week, Kim Starmer will be Prime Minister longer than Liz Truss. True. A lovely photograph. Advertising. Someone else dancing. Elon does a happy dance with his daughter. Yeah, there you go. We'll be happier. There you go. Say in America, eyes test. Oh, don't like the look at that. We'll keep going. Icons, People's Audit. There you go. There's very little hate, as you can tell, on my Twitter feed. So as you can see, there isn't any hatred on any of the feeds I've shared. There's not as many videos of fat people falling over as I was worried that there might be. So look, it's not out there, is it? And people say this and they seldom provide any evidence of it. They hardly say, oh, God, you know. Now, look, if I'm a housing provider and I'm managing a Twitter or X feed, or whatever you want to call it, I'm responsible for the stuff that I put on there. So it will be, you know, me grandizing about how great we are, what developers we are, how many complaints we've solved, you know. It will be housing related stuff that I want to share and an image that I want to promote of my own organisation. I'm not going to be putting on there hate speech. I'm not going to be putting on there homophobic slurs. I'm not going to be even political, am I really? I'm just going to keep it relevant to my organisation and my organisation's core beliefs. That's what's going to be on my Twitter feed. So when we have CEOs turning around and going, well, our customers are afraid, our staff feel threatened by it. Well, they can't feel threatened by your feed because you're not posting that, presumably. You're not posting any hateful content. So they must be threatened by their own feed. So why are you coming off? Why are you removing? If they're threatened by hatred that they see on their Twitter feed, then that's up to them to come off. If you're not promoting hate speech on yours, what purpose does it serve you coming off? And this is where we get into this. It's just virtual signalling. What we do is we go, we don't believe in hatred. We don't believe in homophobia. So we're coming off a platform that endorses it. Well, it doesn't endorse it. There's lots of great stuff on Twitter, X, which we must now call it. There's lots of great stuff on there. But you have to interact with the right people. You have to respond and like and watch. And if that happens to be videos of cats walking along pianos, then that's what you're going to see in your feed. By providers going, we're taking a moral high ground here because we are noble and great, we're coming off this platform, what you're actually doing is surrendering it to the far right, if assuming that you think that they are really on there. And they are on there because it's a big platform, but they're not the only ones on there. By you coming off, you've not helped your resident tenant or your staff feel less threatened, because presumably they're still on there, still receiving the same stuff that you want to come away from. What you do by coming off there is removing more right-minded, righteous thinking. That's what you're doing. You're going, we surrender this platform that we've all loved to the far right, or to people who have different political views, or people who are homophobic. You're giving it to them. And then the members of your community, your staff and your tenants, they are going to see more hatred on there, but they're going to see less people responding or less people standing up. They're going to see less noble efforts. They're not going to be able to read your great post about what a great provider you are. They can't read that now because you've come off in order to try and protect them. Let's call this out for what it is. It's virtue signaling. CEOs, housing providers, they go, we're coming off of here because it's full of hatred. We don't believe in hatred. We're good, noble people doing good, just things. We're coming off because of the hatred. Actually, you're giving a platform over. Get back on there, start posting content that is relevant, start interacting with content that is relevant. Tell people who are finding hate speech not to interact with it. Move on to other things. Look for videos of fat people falling into swimming pools if that's what makes you happy. Let's be honest now. Why are they really coming off there? Because residents and tenants can complain on there. They can put on their Twitter page, and we've already covered this in previous podcasts about censorship from my own provider. They don't like the fact that they can't control a narrative on Twitter. Many of them are now sort of, is Facebook the next one? Because tenants are. LinkedIn, the efforts they'll go to keep LinkedIn, which doesn't have so many tenant engagement, doesn't have much tenant engagement on there because it tends to be a professional network. This is where all the boasting and bragging happens, and it happens unchallenged. On Twitter, someone says, we're a great housing provider. Someone will easily upload a video of a rat-infested, flooded building. That's why people are coming off X. It's got nothing to do with the hate speech that they provide no evidence of. And please don't bombard me with videos of hate speech, because you can find it if you go looking for it. The point I'm making is X isn't flooded by it. It's not a cesspit of it. And by coming off, you're making it worse.
Questions and answers.
Okay, a new section here, if you like. Some response to some questions that have been submitted via the housing sector website. Thank you very much to everyone who has submitted a question, and I tend to respond to you directly, as well as promoting it here, where we could think if it's a big enough question that warrants a wider engagement. First question, I've got any update on Claire Southgate? If you remember, she is the volunteer vicar and teacher assistant that is being evicted from her home by her landlord, GreenSquareAccord. I did reach out to Claire earlier on in the week. This is being recorded on the 16th. I reached out to her late last week or early this week. There was no update. No update from GreenSquareAccord. Still in limbo. Still not knowing what the future is for her, where she'll be living, why she's been evicted from her home. No clarity on that. And we're getting a lot more emails from a lot more people. So that will obviously form a part of a bigger podcast, I suppose. It'll be an ongoing issue. Next question. Why did GSA, GreenSquareAccord, take me to court? Thank you to everyone who offered support on that one. And the the podcast I did regarding that has become one of our biggest videos. Apart from the first one they tried to cancel. So it's resonating with a lot of people. The reason they took me to court was because they don't like the fact that I'm raising issues, that I'm supporting residents, that I have a resident support site, as we've said in the video, because they find me annoying. So that's why that case was dismissed. They have to pay all costs, and we expect them to regroup and then start another legal attack coming at us. Failing that, we don't know. We keep offering mediation, but we never hear. So the real reason, I suppose, is because GreenSquareAccord won't sit down and offer mediation. They won't take the mediation that I've offered. Just not interested. Who knows? Early days. So perhaps we'll find out something next week. What are my thoughts on dispensation lawyers? I think they're a necessary evil. I think anything that takes more money, any legal action, the legal action I've just gone through has just cost GreenSquare more money. Anything that's taking money away from where it should be, which is on providing the service and support needed is a waste. However, there are too many housing providers who simply don't respond to legitimate repair requests. So there is a need to escalate this to a third party. And if it's dispensation lawyer, they're going to get you some money. And unfortunately, that's probably quite appealing to people. And you see these adverts. So you see them. Well, I mean, I don't, because I don't watch daytime television. I don't watch terrestrial television, but I see lots of adverts telling people, and lots of people responding, and lots of online social media posts. And if you type into Google, you'll find them. So there are lots of dispensation lawyers out there, and they offer a great deal. I have in the past been approached to share sort of data with them. And I do find that they're not interested in someone who's got a damp wall or a broken window and their landlord won't fix it, because that's not big enough. It's not big enough feed for them. What they'll do is they'll dine out on the ones where it's a lot of issues, unsafe boilers, unsafe windows, leaking roofs, holding. If there's a whole catalogue of disasters affecting one person's home, then there is a lot of money that they can make. So they tend to go for that. People call it ambulance chasing, and that would be the old adage for it. So look, I'd like to think that we don't need them. If you have an issue reported to you as a housing provider, you should fix it. If someone's got an unsafe boiler, you should fix it, repair it, replace it. If people are going without hot water, then you need to be there. If you're not, people aren't going to necessarily wait 13 months for a housing ombudsman. Perhaps a dispensation lawyer is a quick one. And I guarantee that probably 60-70% of any claims that are made by a dispensation lawyer are quickly settled out of court by the provider. They'll fix the issue and they'll spend some money, give some money to the lawyers, who will in turn provide some money to the tenants. So it's a necessary evil at this point. Let's hope they're not needed for much longer. Cost cutting. Where can housing associations, do I think, make the biggest cost cutting? It's got to be in the wages bill. Wages apparently are escalating by 9%, according to one provider. There is a whole load of middle management that just raise issues and push them onto the next level and fill in Excel spreadsheets. Get rid of them. Get them out. They're dead wood. We've got to strip down to the people that we need. A lot of the senior management, communication teams, they're not needed. They're not necessary. What you need is a strong customer service desk to handle correctly these complaints and issues when they're raised. You need a really strong repair team that can go out and fix these issues when they come out. They're the ones where you should be spending your money. If it's people who aren't able to, liaise internally with their own departments, get rid of them. If they're not showing the cultures that you promote, get rid of them. I've come across so many internal emails and so many emails that have been shared with me by other residents, and you think, who wrote this? Who wrote this response? What are they doing? They're not upholding the qualities that you promote as a housing provider. So I think the first big cutback has got to be on wages. Get rid of that dead wood. As for the communications and the marketing team, these are doing so much to manage a really bad public opinion. What they're doing, they're just fighting fires. If you have those first two, the customer service and the repairs, if they're in place, working properly, you're not going to have as much bad press. You won't have the need to massage and keep your reputation in good working order. You won't need to push this false narrative because you're wasting far too much money, and we see them all. And it goes back to the X thing. They're all on there managing it, and when they can't, they give up on it and give their CEO a nice little speech to write. Get rid of, cut back on it. Yes, you can have someone doing internal communications, but use AI. I mean, look, if I can have this with fake news readers and whatnot on my own, then why do you need teams of people? Cut back on that. Wages. That'd be my answer. Long-winded one for that. Next, thought on mergers. What are my thoughts on mergers? Mergers are a necessary evil, like the dispensation lawyers. So many providers are unable to stay afloat that they have to quickly find people, and this is becoming less now. There's less and less of the bigger organisations to take on the failing small ones, but they seem to be rushed. I mean, all the mergers that I know and the ones that we spoke about earlier, Riverside on one, my own one with GreenSquare and Accord, they were just rushed through and mismanaged appallingly, and there needs to be CEO accountability for that. if you're a small provider that's failing, the CEO needs to be held accountable for. The last thing we want to do is then give that CEO more stock. It doesn't make any sense. They've failed holding on to 5,000 houses. Why are we going to give them 10,000 houses? It doesn't work that way, but it seems to be. We have less and less CEOs managing more and more stock, and they're managing it badly. So many of them are failing. And look, I always say there are some great people and there's some great CEOs out there doing a great job and a very noble effort. But look, you can't deny it, and there are factors in there. You know, the big pushback on shared ownership. I watched one of Matt's round tables, and one of them came on and said, well, you know, we've predicted costs for 10 years ahead. What more can you do? Well, if someone's taken out a mortgage for 25 years, you have to be able to push costs forward. You have to forecast 10, 15, maybe 20 years ahead. And if you can't, and you fail to get the costs right, then why are you able to just force them on to the shared ownership part? You know, the person, the resident. When you can't keep up with your repairs and your buildings fall into dilapidation, and you're selling them off to bring more money onto your books, and then you're looking at merging with other ones, and you're not doing your due diligence, so you're bringing on more dilapidated stock that you can't cope with, so you don't have to sell off to put more money on your books. It's just an absolute failure. We need to hold these CEOs accountable. We need to start saying, same as we did with the Grenfell, you know, actually you're responsible for this failing. Name and shame and get them out, you know. Anyway, that's my thoughts on mergers. There's the questions. If you have any questions that you'd like me to answer, then please let me know. ben@housingsector.co.uk. Okay, there we go. The end of another podcast. That's episode 10. What I'm going to do for the next one will be a recap of the first 10 housing sector podcasts. So I'll do a recap of all the salient points raised in each podcast and give you like a highlight special. That will be exciting, won't it? I have an exciting interview coming up. That one will be coming up soon. And we've still got the GSA ones coming through. Now, I tend to spread myself a little bit thin, as I tend to do. So I'm now looking at perhaps doing a housing sector one and a GreenSquareAccord one, maybe alternate weeks. Try and get 2 out a week. The GSA ones were supposed to be much shorter content, but they've become quite bigger because they just keep giving me more and more stuff, and more worrying evidence keeps coming through. I can't help but quote Michael Corleone, Godfather Part 3. Just as I thought I was getting out, they pulled me back in. So there you go. So we'll have 2 of those coming up. Thank you to everyone who keeps offering support. It really is greatly appreciated. Thank you to everyone who likes and subscribes. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm amazed at how many people do actually listen to podcasts. They seem to be the way. So we'll make sure we keep them up. I wasn't sure if we're going to keep going for that one. And that is all I've got on my list. So that must be that. Thank you very much indeed. This is Housing Sector Podcast. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Housing Sector Podcast. We hope you found this episode insightful and engaging. Please like, subscribe, and share with your friends and colleagues. Your support helps us continue to bring you the latest updates and discussions on housing issues. Stay tuned for our next episode, and don't forget to follow us on our social media sites for more content and updates.